Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're cranking up the volume and diving headfirst into the discography and, yeah, the surprisingly twisty story of the iconic horror punk band, the Misfits.
Oh yeah, it's quite a tale.
And this whole thing, it actually kicked off because we saw a great question over on Reddit. Someone was looking for like a clear roadmap through their huge, and let's be honest, sometimes kind of baffling collection of releases.
Oh, absolutely. You kind of need a map for this one, right? With all the different versions, the reissues, those really distinct eras with different singers.
Totally.
Figuring out where to even start with the Misfits, it can feel a bit like, I don't know, stumbling through a graveyard at midnight.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, your mission, if you choose to keep listening, and hey, you're here, is to walk away with a solid understanding, maybe some key recommendations for getting into the Misfits without feeling, buried under it all.
Yeah, especially with the overlaps and all the changes over the years. We want to make it a smooth initiation, right? And to give you the clearest picture, we've really dug deep. Beyond just that Reddit thread, we've looked at, well, everything. Fan debates, band histories.
The passionate ones, too, I bet.
Oh, yeah, the official and the, let's say, passionately unofficial ones. Even some of the legal documents, that shaped their story. Plus articles looking at their cultural impact. It's a real 360 view.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We got to go all the way back to the beginning. What most fans would call the foundational sound, the Danzig era.
Right.
Ran from 77 to 83.
Right. This early period, this is where the Misfits' DNA really formed. Think about those first singles, those EPs, tracks like Cough Cool, Bullet, Horror Business,
Night of the Living Dead, Halloween.
Beware 3 Hits from Hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's really interesting, I think, is how they fused that raw punk sound with like melodies from early 60s rock and, of course, the horror and sci-fi themes.
Just B-movies.
Exactly. It was this totally original, like Frankenstein's monster of a sound. Nothing else quite like it.
And then there's the almost legendary Static Age album, recorded way back, early 78. Right?
Yeah, 78. But it didn't get a proper official release until 1996.
Wild. Talk about keeping your debut locked away.
Well, its delayed release kind of adds to the mystique, doesn't it? Even though you couldn't just go buy it back then, those recordings, they circulated bootlegs and stuff. And they were hugely influential, shaped the early sound, inspired lots of other bands. You could almost call it the Rosetta Stone for the original Misfits.
Then, 1982, we finally get Walk Among Us, their first official full-length album. And someone on Reddit specifically mentioned its perfect flow. Said it's essential not just for Misfits fans, but for any music fan.
Yeah, I saw that comment. It really highlights how cohesive that album is. It's like the perfect distillation of that early horror punk energy, but in a complete package.
Accessible, maybe.
Yeah, accessible. You can hear the progress from the earlier singles, but it just works so well on Walk Among Us. Super catchy, memorable stuff.
But just a year later, 83, comes Earth 80 Wolf's Blood. And that was different.
Oh, yeah. A definite shift, much faster, more aggressive, almost hardcore punk territory.
And the story is they recorded it, like, super fast after a Black Flag show.
That's the legend. Under 6 hours. Which honestly tells you everything about that sonic shift, right?
Right.
It was intense, brutal, mirroring what was happening in hardcore at the time.
A long way from the catchy stuff on Walk Among Us.
Totally different vibe. Shows they weren't afraid to explore different kinds of punk energy.
Okay, now here's where it can get a bit tricky for newcomers. The compilation albums. Legacy of Brutality, Collection I, Collection 2.
These mostly came out after the Danzig era ended. They were meant to gather up those early singles, the EP tracks, put them in one place.
Sounds helpful.
It is, and this is a key thing, fans on Reddit always point out, Glenn Danzig actually went back and tinkered with some of the tracks, remixes, sometimes even overdubs.
So they're not quite the original recording.
Not always, no. The versions on Collection I or Legacy might sound different from how the songs originally sounded back in 78 or 79, which is why...
Which makes that bootleg 12 Hits from Hell kind of important.
Exactly. Because that's supposedly a more authentic snapshot of those early sessions, even though the official release much later had a different mix again. It's complicated.
Baffling. And we should mention the live album Evil Live, too. Late 80s release, right?
Yeah.
Captures that early stage energy.
Yeah, good point. Raw stuff. So, looking back at this first era, the Danzig years, What's the big picture?
Well, it feels like the foundation, right? The blueprint.
Absolutely. It's what most people think of. Horror, sci-fi, B-movies, Danzig's vocals, his songwriting. That defined horror punk, the energy, those dark, catchy tunes. That's what still grabs people.
Okay, so the band breaks up. Danzig goes off, does Sam Hain, then his solo career, which was huge.
Right. End of an era.
But the Misfits weren't staying buried.
No.
1995, Jerry Only and Doyle would bring it back. But with a new singer, Michael Graves, Danzig wasn't involved.
Nope. Declined to rejoin. Which, understandable, maybe.
Now, this marks a pretty huge shift, right?
Yeah.
How did the existing fans take that?
Yeah.
Based on what you saw?
Oh, it was seismic. And the reaction, both then and now, kind of shows that. The albums from this time, American Psycho in 97 and Famous Monsters in 99, they definitely pivoted stylistically.
Oh, so
Much more heavy metal, really. A cleaner production, different vocal style from Graves. Some fans on Reddit literally called it a reboot of the band. Sound and image.
And I guess the reaction was pretty split. Polarized.
Totally. You've got people who genuinely loved this new sound, the energy, but then you've got others who felt like, it just wasn't the real Misfits without Danzig.
I did see a lot of love for Famous Monsters, though, in those discussions.
Yeah, definitely. People mention the atmosphere, the cool packaging, the lyrics telling stories. Pumpkinhead came up a lot.
Right.
But yeah, still that strong contingent saying, nope, Danzig era or nothing. Although one user made a great point, very punk rock. Punk rock is about liking what you like no matter what others say.
That's the spirit. And we should probably note, Mike Hideous filled in on vocals for a bit in 98, too, right?
Yeah, briefly. Just adds another layer to that period's lineup changes.
So the key takeaway for the Michael Graves era.
It was a fundamental reimagining. More metal, different vocals, new dynamic. It definitely got its own fan base, kept the name alive in the late 90s. But yeah, still a major point of debate for longtime fans who really hold on to that original sound. A clear dividing line.
Okay, moving into the 2000s, we enter what we're calling the Jerry Only era. This is what, 2001 to 2016-ish, where Jerry, the bassist, the constant, he steps up to the mic.
Yeah, lead vocals, and he led various lineups, brought in some familiar names too, like Des Cadena, Marky Ramone.
What was the direction musically then?
Well, it shows Jerry's commitment to keeping the Misfits legacy going. They put out Project 1950 early on, which was kind of unexpected.
What was that?
A covers album, classic 50s rock and roll hits, showed a different side, different influences.
Interesting. And then there was a new album of original stuff later, The Devil's Reign, early 2010s.
That's the one. And the general feeling on Reddit about that one seems, well,
Pretty rough. I saw one comment that just said, flat out, just don't bother. Ouch.
yeah, that seems to be the dominant view online, unfortunately. But, even with all the negativity, I did see at least one person say they liked the track Land of the Dead.
So, still subjective, even then.
Always is, right? Taste is taste. And they also put out a live album, Dead Alive, during this time. Playing older stuff, mostly.
And it's really key here. Through all these singers, all the changes, Jerry Only is the one constant, the anchor since day one.
Absolutely. He's the thread running through the whole thing.
So the main thing about this Jerry Only era,
It's Jerry taking the frontman role, exploring different styles, covers, new songs, and just making sure the Misfits name, the music, stayed out there, kept going through different versions of the band.
Okay, now this next chapter, this is the one I think nobody saw coming. The original Misfits reunion started in 2016, and it's still kind of going.
It is. Glenn Danzig, Jerry Only, Doyle Wolfgang von Frankenstein, back on stage together, first time in over 30 years.
Insane. What was the initial reaction?
Huge. For many fans, it was like a dream come true. Those first shows at Riot Fest in 2016 were massive, and they've kept doing sporadic shows since then. They're even playing Coachella next year, April 2025.
Wow. And the lineup includes Dave Lombardo and AC Slade now, too.
Yeah, Lombardo on drums, AC Slade on second guitar, some serious musical muscle there.
So the big question, any new music, is that happening? I know Danzig said something about albums not being a great business model.
Yeah, he's been a bit cautious about committing to a full album, but he hasn't totally ruled out new songs.
And Jerry?
Jerry only seems keen for it to happen, but wants it to be organic, not forced. Let the collaboration lead where it leads.
Gotcha.
So I think the main takeaway for now is just the sheer significance of having these guys back together, playing those classic songs. It's a huge deal for fans, old and new, to see that lineup doing those songs.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Beyond the music, the lineups, the Misfits have this incredibly strong visual identity. The brand, that Fiend skull logo.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. Even people who don't know the music might know the skull.
Oh, absolutely. It's iconic. Instantly recognizable.
Where did that even come from?
It's actually from an old movie serial, 1946, called The Crimson Ghost. He was the villain. They adopted it early on, and it just stuck. Became totally synonymous with the band and their whole horror vibe.
Perfect fit. And they had the Fiend Club too, right? The fan club.
Yeah.
Run by Danzig.
Yeah, very DIY, sending out merch, newsletters, fostering that direct connection with fans early on, which is pretty unique for the time.
But the strong identity, the merch, that also led to some complications. The business side, legal battles.
Exactly, that's the other side of the coin. The lawsuit between Danzig and Jerry, only in the 90s, over the trademarks, the merch rights, that was a huge turning point.
How did that end up?
It resulted in a really unusual situation. Basically shared ownership. Both Danzig and Jerry could independently license and sell Misfit stuff without needing the other's okay.
Which sounds potentially messy.
Well, yeah, and the legal stuff didn't stop there. 2014, Danzig sued Jerry again, this time claiming Jerry was licensing stuff without authorization, including some, let's just say, unexpected items.
Like what?
Things like crimson ghost dug boots, shower curtains, stuff like that.
Wow, okay. What the fans make of all that? Did you see discussions about the merch itself?
Oh yeah, lots of opinions online, especially on Reddit. Some fans think certain items are cool, funny, just part of the brand extension. Others see it as like diluting the legacy, maybe even exploiting it. You even see people saying, just listen to the old stuff, forget the merch, or suggesting buying bootleg stuff instead, just to avoid the official commercial side of it all.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How much has all that readily available merch, even the weird stuff, actually kept the Misfits name out there? Maybe even more than consistent new music in recent years.
It's a valid question. So the key point about the business side.
It seems like the visual identity, the brand, the merch, it's become just as important, maybe more important to some, than the music itself.
Deeply intertwined, yeah. And unfortunately, it's also been a major source of conflict and legal fights. Balancing that artistic legacy with the commercial side is tricky.
So, okay. We've got this long, complicated history. Different sounds, different members, legal fights. Why? Why does the love for the Misfits endure? What's the magic? That Fiend connection?
Well, I think right from the start, they created this really unique mix, that blend of like dark romantic horror and sci-fi stuff with those super catchy 60s rock melodies, plus the raw punk energy. It just hit a nerve with a certain crowd.
People who love monster movies.
Exactly. People who love the classic horror aesthetic, but also the rebellion of punk.
And they definitely leaned into being outsiders, right? They weren't chasing mainstream approval.
Not at all. They embraced the weird, the macabre, the unconventional, and that resonated deeply with fans who felt like outsiders themselves. It created this sense of community, you know, the ghouls, fiends, and the living dead finding common ground.
And their influence is undeniable too, right? On punk, metal, other stuff. Even if they aren't always name-checked alongside, like the Ramones or the Sex Pistols.
For sure, their shadow looms large. And ultimately, like we saw in those fan discussions, arguing about the best Misfits era, it's all personal taste, isn't it?
Like that Redditor said, punk rock is about liking what you like.
That's the heart of it, really. It's subjective. The Misfits mean something different to everyone who connects with them, whether it's the music, the image, the attitude.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this deep dive up. It's clear the Misfits story, their discography, it's anything but simple.
Definitely not. It's this complex tapestry, right? Different musical eras, constantly shifting lineups, plenty of drama along the way.
From that raw, early horror punk with Danzig
Through the more metal sound with Graves.
to Jerry. Only just keeping the flame alive no matter what.
It's been a wild ride. Fascinating, sometimes kind of turbulent.
So for you listening out there, if you're intrigued, if you want to jump into the Misfits world, where do you start? We'd probably suggest a collection maybe? And definitely Walk Among Us. Get that classic Danzig sound.
Yeah, that's a solid grounding. And if you're curious about the Graves era, maybe, like you said, sample Famous Monsters. See what you think.
And the later stuff.
Well,
You know the general fan consensus now, but hey, always listen for yourself. Make up your own mind. Punk rock.
exactly. Which brings us to maybe a final thought for you to chew on. Given this incredibly long, often messy history, the breakups, the reunions, the lawsuits, what does the fact that the Misfits still exist in these different forms actually tell us?
What does it say about the power of that core identity, that connection with the Fiends?
Right. Is it purely about the music they made decades ago?
Yeah.
Or has the Misfits brand, that skull, that whole aesthetic, has it taken on a life of its own? maybe even independent of the music sometimes.
Something to think about, definitely. Long after the last chord fades,